in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane!
Last night, we watched a Rick Dalton double feature. All the shooting. I love that stuff, you know, the killing.
A lot of killing.
Anybody order fried sauerkraut? Crown you Nazi bastards!
What is up, guys? Kid Critic is back with another review, and this review is for the new, highly anticipated Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and almost every other famous actor in Hollywood today. And this movie's about 1969 Los Angeles, where everything is changing as TV star Rick Dalton and his longtime stunt double Cliff Booth make their way around an industry they are hardly recognized anymore and are trying to get back to that stardom where they used to be at before. And you know what? For today's review, I feel like it's only right that we bring back the shades for today, because it just feels right, especially for the movie that we're doing this review on. So, with all that nonsense out of the way, Joker, start this review for us.
And here we go.
Alright, so heading into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, obviously I was very excited. It was one of my most anticipated movies of the year because Quentin Tarantino obviously has directed some fantastic movies. Obviously Reservoir Dogs, Django Unchained, Inglourious Basterds, and Pulp Fiction, which is most people's favorite. It's not mine, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. So obviously Quentin Tarantino, you got Leonardo DiCaprio in there, who hasn't been in a movie since The Revenant, and you also got Brad Pitt in there, you got Margot Robbie in there, you got Al Pacino in there, you got Kurt Russell in there, you got Luke Perry in there, you got probably almost all the famous actors who's ever lived in this movie, even though some are dead. I mean, Bruce Lee's in the movie. Who would have thought he would ever be in a movie again? So with that said, I was very excited. The trailers looked awesome, so I was heading into the movie expecting a great time, and I came out of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I am pretty happy to say that I liked this movie a lot. Now, before I start off with the pros of this movie, you can totally tell that Quentin Tarantino is in love with the history of Hollywood. I mean, there's just so many callbacks and references to old movies in the 60s and actors and actresses who were big in that era, and there's just like so. First of all, the production design of this movie, I mean, now this is going into our pros, but the production design of this film is fantastic. I mean, even though I wasn't alive during the 60s, you got sucked in. Like, everything they got right, even the Taco Bells in the 60s they got right, and it's absolutely incredible the way they transformed Hollywood now into Hollywood in the 60s, and I'm sure it's an absolute blast to shoot this movie, as I've heard from people who were making the movie and during interviews. Now let's go into the second pro of this film, and my second pro is that this movie has fantastic performances. I mean, obviously you're going to get brilliant performances when you have a cast as stellar as this one. Now, most people are saying that Brad Pitt is the standout of this movie, and don't get me wrong, he is absolutely brilliant in this film, especially in the third act. He has some great scenes, and there's a scene in particular in the second act, however, that was just intense, and you just did not know what was going to happen. But he is great in the movie. However, I don't think he's the standout of the movie. I actually think the standout is his counterpart in Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, obviously Leo's great and knows everything he does, and we haven't seen him in a movie in like 3 years, ever since he won his Oscar, but he is fantastic in this, because I think he did a great job of playing an actor who's struggling in this era of Hollywood. I mean, there is some great scenes with Leonardo DiCaprio in this film. I mean, the trailer scene that you see in the trailer is brilliant. I mean, that scene is also hilarious, but kind of a bit dramatic, seeing like where his character is at that point in his life. But my favorite scene in probably the whole entire movie, I'll just say this, and it has to do with him and a flamethrower. That's all I'll say. It is fantastic, but Leonardo DiCaprio, in my opinion, is the standout of this movie for the reasons I just said. And my third pro of this movie is that I thought the relationship between DiCaprio and Brad Pitt was amazing. It was just so enjoyable to watch on screen. However, I don't think we got enough of it in the movie. I definitely wished there was more of their relationship played through the movie, because there's a most of the movie they're kind of separated, but well, it's just fantastic seeing them both on screen. I wish we saw more of it, but just that brotherly bond, you felt it as soon as they popped up on screen together, and it was just a definite highlight of the movie. Now, going into my fourth pro of this film, you know, before watching this movie, I was just wondering, how are they going to weave all these storylines that we saw in this trailer together? And especially once you start watching the movie, like, how are they going to weave that storyline with this storyline and that storyline to make one big, huge climax and then the resolution? And I gotta admit, Tarantino did a great job putting all these story elements together and combining, and then you have the big, huge climax, which is fantastic. And I think he did a fantastic job, because if he didn't do a good job at that, this movie could have fallen apart and been a huge mess. Now, my fifth pro of this movie is probably my favorite thing about this film. The third act of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably one of the most craziest third acts you'll ever see in a Tarantino movie. It is, when you see that third act, you know it's a Tarantino movie. It is crazy, it is nasty, it is hilarious, it is intense. And another thing that Tarantino did gloriously is balancing his Tarantino style with some comedy, with the intensity all at once, and he did a great job of balancing that, because again, if he didn't do that well, the third act could have been a mess, but it wasn't. It was a brilliant, well put together third act that had terrific performances again, and it was amazing to see on screen. It was definitely my favorite part of the movie. Alright, now while I really enjoyed this movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does have problems, and for me the biggest problem of this movie, well, I really enjoyed the first two acts. There were some really great parts of the first two acts. However, there's like good chunks of the first two acts that I think you could just do away with, and during those moments you can definitely feel that 2-hour and 40-minute runtime of this movie. And while I definitely saw what Tarantino was going for, and I won't spoil what he's going for during those moments, I just don't think you needed them for the overall story. Now, while I really enjoyed the first two acts and I had a pretty solid time with, I mean, nowhere near as good as the third act, a good chunk of those first two acts, where you probably could have taken out 30 minutes of the movie and probably would have made this film a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, probably. And my second con of the movie is that I think they underused Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. I don't think she gets enough to do in this movie, to the point where I kind of think that you don't need her in this film as much as you used her, to be honest. I felt like a lot of it you just didn't need. While most of the moments were pretty entertaining, I just don't think you really needed her in the movie. I mean, at certain points in the movie, you definitely need Sharon Tate in there, but for a good chunk of her screen time, I just don't feel like you need her. Or you probably could have just added more stuff that has to do with the overall story for Sharon Tate or Margot Robbie to do. And while Margot Robbie is really good in the movie, she does a great job as Sharon Tate. I just don't think she gets enough to do in this movie. I feel like they underused her. Alright, so with all the pros, the cons out of the way, let's get down to the score. And I gave Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a 4 out of 5 Fernies. It's definitely an enjoyable time at the theaters. While it definitely has some issues, the third act is wonderful, the performances are great, the relationship between Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio is fantastic. Tarantino did a great job of weaving in all the story elements in together. There's some great intensity moments in the movie, there's some great comedic moments in the movie, and overall I had a blast with this movie. I definitely recommend this movie, especially if you're a fan of old school Hollywood, because you definitely get a ton of that. The production design again is just breathtaking and just absolutely fantastic. And with that said, guys, do not forget to like and subscribe, and tell me down in the comment section below, what did you think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? And with that said, as in every single Kid Critic review and video or so on and so forth, look out for the next video or review, and peace.